and policy analyst. She's also a House of Representatives aspirant for Chukun Kajuru Federal Constituency in Kaduna State. And she's already there, sitting pretty, and will be joining me virtually. Now, this conversation promises to be insightful, promises to be bold, and of course, deeply necessary. So stay with us. We'll be right back. And don't forget to always follow us across all our social media platforms. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Stronger education systems, more inclusive economies, and communities that work for everyone. So I'm calling on you today, not just to support the bill in theory, but to act.
Mommy, why don't I see any women in parliament?
My daughter, that's how it has been since even I was a little girl. No, Mommy, this has to change. Women make up 50% of Nigeria's population and less than 4% in the National Assembly. Our country cannot compete productively with one hand tied behind its back. Let's pass the reserved seats for women's bill. It's not about women alone, it's about our whole nation. Pass the reserved seats for women bill! Pass the reserved seat for women bill! Pass the reserved seat for women bill! Pass the reserved seat!
Pass the reserved seat for women bill.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's now time for me to bring my guest, and she's sitting pretty, hand on the chin, waiting for us to start this conversation in earnest. Honorable Hawa, good evening. Corporate communications consultant with over 2 decades of experience in media and journalism. So I'm on the other side of the set, so you're the one who's going to be answering all my questions today. And thank you so much for joining us. Chevening scholar, content strategist, and politician. So Howard, so let's get straight into the conversation, because I have been looking forward to this, you know, considering the fact that you are throwing your cap into the ring again, and you were running again in the 2027 elections. Well, for now, as an aspirant, you get clarity for, I mean, we have to pass the primaries, don't we? But let's first of all look at the dynamics, okay? The 2027 elections, of course, campaigns are already heating up. Secondly, parties are already, you know, shopping for candidates that they think are popular. How do you look at the concerns being raised by women groups that, you know, there are not enough women in these political parties? I know that you're a member of the ADC and you are looking to, you know, compete under the ADC. But what's the feelers that you're getting ahead of 2027 in women's role in politics?
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Adaura. It's a great pleasure to be back on Gender Agenda. And I too have been looking forward to this conversation because it's a very important conversation. And personally, if you ask me, I think we're having this conversation a little bit too late.
Yes.
We're supposed to have had this conversation like a year or more ago so that it will enable us have more clarity and the women groups as well as the parties that are shopping, if at all the parties are shopping for credible women candidates
yes.
to support. 2027 is pregnant. You know, the kind of very enclosed pregnancy that even a scan cannot predict the gender of the baby. That's what 2021 is. Because the more you see, when you look into the situation in the polity, the more you see, the less you understand. And I don't even think right now the political parties are looking for credible women leaders to fly their flag. They're not even interested in giving women any leverage or any kind of privilege. If you can't compete, you're out. That's what I keep being told. You won't believe it, but my party leaders keep telling me this is not 2023. You're not going to have a free ride. You either compete favorably or you're out.
Wow.
So it's not as if they're looking for credible women or even women at all, any kind of woman to float the ticket of their party. They're only interested in politicking. And you know, politicking, the way it's been designed in this country, is a game of survival of the fittest by men. And that is currently what is playing out in all the political parties, including mine. And 2027 is just pregnant with very, very unexpected outcomes. No one really knows what's going to happen. But I can tell you this for free. I'm not sure the political parties are interested in women. They're not. And this brings us back to what I have always said since after 2022. The only way we're going to be making any headway in this conversation is if we, Nigerian women, begin to ask ourselves, what can we do to make this a reality, not what men can do. They are not interested.
Okay, okay, let's ask. I mean, you raised a very interesting, conversation there. And I'll say this to you. Right from 2023, when the elections were over, and we saw, the emergence of, some of the principal boys' club in some of the positions across board. And we have been reviewing participation of women at the political party level. Let's even start from there, Hawa. Because when you get women on the table within the political party, structure, you perhaps have a modicum of courage that women will emerge at the ballot, right? That's what's been said. But we don't see enough of that. And even though we have had conversations, we've had town halls, we started the reserve seats for women's bill, we're hopeful that it will get passed. But in the absence of that, Hawa, do you not think that the presentation of the first foot forward by political parties must have missed the mark, leaving women out of the room? And I'm saying this because APC just had its convention. We didn't see a lot of, nice, pretty heads, women with capacity who were emerging. We saw a few, but even from the constitution of the list, Labour Party has a female chairman who is, at the head of the affairs. We are yet to see any female presidential candidate, or whether they're running or those running under the party. ADC, for instance, had its, convention a few days ago. And all we saw was, the boys' club. So that's your party. And I'm asking you this question because even though they've asked you and said to you, come in and compete favorably, does the environment give you optics that you have any hope, and what can be done?
The environment doesn't give me optics, Adaura. That's the truth. Unfortunately, you know me, I don't bite words, and I'm not known for pretense, but I keep telling my colleagues, those that keep supporting me, telling me don't give up, I keep telling them every day I'm seeing more reason why I should perhaps just accept defeat and doff my hat and say, I'm not going to do this anymore because there are no uptakes that gives me hope. That's the truth.
So with the reserve seats bill, you know, with all the inroads and all the nice, somebody said they called it nice noise that we made, and the advocacy, and again, we are coming to a time where primaries will be held. Any hope for that to actually give us a window of opportunity? And what's your call to the 10th Parliament? Because again, it was sponsored by a man.
Okay. The reserved seats for women is a very good cause. It is long overdue. But then, even when that gets achieved, we, the Nigerian women, have got our own due diligence, our own inner work, our own homekeeping, or is it housekeeping that we need to do. We need to ensure that when the reserved seats bill for women have been approved, the women that get those opportunities and privileges are women who can further the conversation and keep it moving and keep the doors open. What we have seen in the past 20 plus years of Nigerian democracy is women representation without opportunities for women. We cannot afford to have a continuation of that, because that automatically means no representation. If let's say currently in the House of Representatives, about 9 representatives are women, or is it 12 or 13? I can't remember. So unless that 13 are able to multiply into, let's say, 23 or more, there is still no representation, because 13 out of 100 plus voices is no voice at all. So it's not just providing the opportunities, it's also ensuring that the people who get to be given this responsibility are people who can are women who can deliver the responsibilities attached to those opportunities. I always say, Adaora, if you remember right from 2022, Nigerian women, we cannot afford to do politics the way men do. Because if we say we're going to do politics the way men do, we're not going to get anywhere. They have perfected the craft. They have mastered it. We cannot compete. We cannot catch up. So we have to carve our own niche and build on it. How do we carve our own niche? By opening more doors to women, by continuously training women, by continuously improving on their capacity and development. All those things are going on by various organizations and women. I have come across a lot of women in the past 3 years who have gone ahead to improve their capacity to grow, to get themselves ready. But the opportunities have to be presented, and right now there aren't many.
All right, so I hear you loud and clear, and I seem to also get the question on mentorship and placement in that conversation to a large degree. Now, again, you've spoken quite extensively, off camera and certain places about the need to mentor, empower, and place, young women in spaces. But there is also something called political gatekeeping, Hawa, that we cannot run away from, right? And that's within the patriarchal system. Other countries like Namibia, consider the zebra, what they call the zebra section for politics, where they, merge women and male candidates. Of course, we know they have the first female president, vice president female, and, speaker female. The whole lineup are female. We're not saying that we want to exclude the men entirely, but, I mean, it is what it is. How do we look at that political gatekeeping? Now, what can Nigeria learn from countries like Rwanda, Namibia, and even countries like Senegal? Someone said, maybe in the absence of the reserve seats, can the president look at an executive order, at least to be able to see more women in the room? Because if you leave it to the political parties, Hawa, like you said, it's like the shutters are lower. Yeah. So what's your advice to the executive at this moment?
That is a very good suggestion. If the executive can do that, it will go a very long way. But then you also must remember that it is a matter of interest. The executive have to have an interest in that. And this is where personally I would like to call on the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who was a one-time senator herself at some point, Senator Oluremi Tinubu. This is something that she should take an interest in. This is something she should take up. And with her suggestion and intervention, of course, the current President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, can take on. You never know. Any political party that can take on this is going to be the political party that makes the difference and eventually win. I have been telling this, I've been saying this within my own party, but the thing is, I don't even think anybody is listening to me. I was telling somebody this afternoon, I don't think they're listening to me. I say something and they just brush it aside and they continue to do their thing. But the fact remains, any party that upholds the women's cause might be the party that Nigerians have faith and confidence in. I have seen that, but then at the end of the day, it's up to them to what they decide they're going to do. Regardless, we cannot continue to keep women out because women's participation is integral to the progress and development of Nigeria. We are way behind. We are way behind progress and development as a country, and it's embarrassing. For everyone who has traveled to even just Benin Republic, to Ghana, to even Niger Republic, you come back home and you feel embarrassed.
All right.
We are the giant of Africa, so
Yes.
we must be mindful of the fact that we do not just owe Nigerians a responsibility, the next generation that is. We owe the whole of Africa a responsibility to be a role model nation. And that cannot be achieved without women.
All right, now let's look at, I know that there's a quote by Sirleaf. She said, Sirleaf Johnson Sirleaf, former president of Liberia, and she said, leadership is about making tough decisions even when they are unpopular, right? And so when you talk about the lack of popularity of, women in the room for certain men who have certain interests, someone would say, do you want me to position a woman? Where will my position be? There are boys who have worked with me. There are men who have, who have been loyal for decades. It's time for us to bring them into the room. So you want us to replace them with a woman. Then you have the conversation, oh, she's married to someone else. Will she take our position and our ticket to represent her husband's people or our people? So you have all of those dynamics. But the elephant in the room is finance and security. We see the level of insecurity across Nigeria heightening, unfortunately. Do you think with this temperature, look at what's happening in Jos, look at what's happening in Benue, look at what's happening in Adamawa, Zamfara, the level of displacement and insecurity. Women are saying that it gets slimmer by the day to want to come out to run because they fear that the elections may turn violent. What would be your perspective on this? And who should we be speaking to look at this early enough? Because you've talked about timeline. And again, money politics, you cannot remove it. The highest bidder takes it all in a lot of the elections. How do we look at that as well as an issue of criteria?
You see, Nigeria insecurity is unfortunately a cancer that has been allowed to spread too far. And it has been allowed to become so I don't even.
All right, I think she must have frozen there. I hope. Okay.
In Kaduna State were kidnapped.
Yes.
On their way to go and write jam. So the insecurity is embarrassingly high, and we cannot continue like this. I just hope and pray that those concerned, those responsible are listening to us, are listening to all Nigerians, and are taking notes. Because I honestly believe we should not allow this to go on as a country. We shouldn't. The insecurity is not beyond Nigeria. Nigeria is bigger than any terrorists, rebels, or agitators, or whatever. Nigeria is bigger than all of them. And they shouldn't be allowed to continue to hold Nigeria to ransom. Absolutely. Without security, the 2027 elections is one of the reasons why I said it's pregnant, because the insecurities continues to worsen and election is coming. You just keep asking yourself, what's going to happen? Nobody knows. So many unanswered questions, so much doubt, so much fear on the other hand, just so many things you keep thinking about.
All right.
And then lastly, financing. That's the greatest gatekeeping in politics, financing. That is what I've been asked several times. Who's your sponsor? And you know what I say, Adaora, when they ask me who's
your sponsor?
I say, God.
I say, small girl with big God. And I'm sure that's a very good place for us to live. It's very comical. The small girl with big God answer. I think that's what does it most times. But Howard, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate you joining us on today's show. Howard is running, in the 2027, gearing up for 2027 to run for House of Representatives under the ADC for Chikun Kajiru Federal Constituency in Kaduna State. Thank you. And she says money is the biggest gatekeeper of politics against women in Nigeria. And we do hope, like she mentioned, that the president considers an executive order to perhaps see how those waivers can come for more women to run under political parties, it's even the smaller one. But that's the much we can take today. Of course, this is where we bring the show to an end, not that much. And I am Adora Sidney Jack, and like we always say, please pass the reserved seats now. See you again next week. I would like to end on this note that reserved, not reduced. They say reserve seats as though a woman's place must be marked, measured, managed, but I say these seats are not concessions. They are corrections because history has sat too long in the comfort of one voice, one gender, one gaze, shaping the nation's direction. Reserve seats are not favors, they are futures. A small opening carved into a wall that has refused to shift for decades. Listen, when a woman rises, she rises carrying worlds unknown, communities unheard, stories unspoken. She brings the market's wisdom, the home's diplomacy, the street's resilience, the nation's heartbeat. A seat for a woman is a seat for the girl watching, the community waiting, the history unfolding. And if democracy means all of us, then representation must look like all of us. So keep your doubts, your whispers, your fears, disguised as analysis. These seats are reserved not because women are less, but because the system gave them even less space to begin with. Give her the seat and watch her turn it into a table, a platform, a pathway, a promise. Reserved seats are not the end. They are the beginning of the democracy we were always meant to build. My name is Adora Sidney Jack. Thank you for staying with us. See you again next week.
All across the nations, all around the world, women are longing to be free. No longer in the shadows, forced to stay behind, but side by side in true equality.